Okay, judging by the number of tools that are now on the workbench and no longer in the toolbox, work has been proceeding on the Mustang. The objective today was to address some of the cooling system issues electrically, and to do so we've attempted to minimize the voltage drop across all the components. The relays that were used in this vehicle prior, obviously a couple of mismatched relays, very inexpensive, with a pre-assembled socket with a maximum cable size of 14 gauge going to the fans. So these are all too common, and unfortunately they don't work very well at all. So get rid of that. And we've installed a set of Hella 40 amp waterproof relays, custom made harnesses. When I say waterproof, the sockets actually snap into them from the bottom, so the electrical connectors are sealed both from the bottom of the connector as well as the top. And when you snap these things in, they are sealed. We've also supplied power with a much better quality ATC fuse panel, one that accepts a 4 gauge input that replaces the fuse panel you saw in the earlier video, which is this guy. And although it's got a couple of 30 amp fuses and it had 2 more 30 amp fuses in it, it does have only a number 10 input. So this fuse panel is really limited to maybe about 40 amps safe, and they're just not intended for, you know, to be sticking 30 or 40 amp fuses in all slots. They'll melt up when you do that. This fuse panel is good for about 150 amps. We stock them in all different sizes, from 3 position to 15 position, and they work great. The other side of the equation is the return path for the fans. And we've optimized that by connecting the 10 gauge wires that go to the fan motors directly to the frame. Notice we've used star washers. These are internal external star washers. There's one on the bottom you can't see as well. And just run a stud through the frame. You know, it's about 1.25 inches long, 5/16 18 bolt, and it's got a nut holding it in place, and then you got a nut that you can actually put the ring terminals on, so you get a nice grounding point. This beats the heck out of using like a self-tapping screw, even if it's nickel plated. The harnesses are all very neatly rooted and tied up out of harm's way. And then we've got the fan plugs. These are the standard plugs that all of the fan manufacturers use, with few exceptions. We stock them. They're hard to find. Notice we have 10 gauge wire entering the plug, and then the fan itself has, this is approximately 16 gauge, maybe a hair under. Most people assume because the fan has 16 gauge that that's all you need, but that's not true. These fans draw more current than you think, and they build them as cheap as they can, so we custom make the harnesses to suit their real current requirements. On the passenger side of the engine compartment, where we've got the MSD 6 BTM ignition box, it was already wired as you see here, so the previous installer did a nice job installing it, which is nice. I don't have to fix that. But I did remove the ground. It was grounded to the battery, which is on the other side, and I've grounded it here. And the reason I've done so is because I can't ground it on the other side where the fans are, because when the fans actually turn on and off, they create a tremendous amount of back EMF, which is noise. We don't want that noise to interfere with the box. Notice we now have a very large 4 gauge braided ground strap that goes to the engine block. And I've left it loose here because as we install the upgraded charge lead for the battery relocation kit, we are going to also ground that from this boss right there to that same location. So that's kind of a wrap for today. Today we got a lot of stuff done, and there's one more shot of this bad boy. So tune in tomorrow to see part 3.